We have a few news items just to get into. The first one coming courtesy of Dave Meltzer, who noted that CM Punk underwent surgery earlier this week for the torn left triceps he suffered when doing the tope early in the Jon Moxley match. This is usually about an 8-month recovery period. His doctor recommended surgery right away to prevent any muscle atrophy. So rather than going back and revisiting everything that we have discussed very heavily from last weekend, looking specifically at CM Punk, what do you see as CM Punk's professional wrestling future after all of this, and how this injury plays into it as well? Which, I mean, if this is the timetable that we're looking at, an 8-month recovery period, is that almost a bit of a silver lining? Does that lessen the immediacy of AEW to take action? Could they look at he's hurt, he's out for 8 months, we're going to table this and reassess in 8 months, where maybe it's going to, maybe it cools over. I'm very curious of where, of what Punk's future is going to be. It's very much in flux.
Certainly, yeah. At this point in time, I wonder if it's even still a little early to speculate on his in-ring career, just given how little we know about the investigation and whatever pending punishments. It seems like he will probably suffer the brunt of, I should say. I'll say, like, from maybe from a fan's perspective, I don't think it can simply be, well, you're suspended. You're suspended for, I don't know, 6 months, and you can serve it while you're recovering from injury. I
That to
think
me is like a really
it's
empty
nothing. Yeah.
suspension when he's out at this time,
I think the
regardless.
audience needs a bit more than that. I also don't think it's necessarily right to be like, hey, you're suspended for 6 months after you've recovered from injury. I don't think that necessarily makes sense. There's no, like,
Do
it's
you think
very,
if they believe like the investigation points enough at Punk, the decision is now to be made rather than let this
yeah.
linger and reassess things down the road? Because
Well,
that to me would just be putting off something that is almost going to be like this cloud in a sense of, because I yeah, it's a very easy to just get like speculative here, and rather than this injury at all interrupting like a major decision that they have to make.
the investigation should be completely separate from the injury, and that means whenever you have the conclusions and the punishments have to be dealt, it should be regardless of whatever took place in ring, right? Not only that, but you have to like kind of announce what you want to do with the other people that are involved. And for that reason, I don't see them delaying the announcement until Punk is ready to come back, if he is at all. And
This guy's going to be turning 44 years old in October. It's
mhm,
he's just coming off a major injury. Like that foot, that was a major injury that he had, like pulverizing the bones in the foot. And you heard him at that press conference describe the arduous rehab process that he went through all summer. And you're back, and save for the 3-minute Moxley match, your first real match back, and you suffer a completely different injury that is going to have an even longer recovery time, potentially 8 months. And are you? It's also like back in June. Like, here's a guy who had just won the title, and you heard him say that he wanted to be here for this company this summer. He wanted to make this company money, and that obviously drove him to go through the rehab process. This time around, it's like, man, you are at odds with this company. And based on a lot of the language in that press conference, it's like, what are you waking up at the crack of dawn to attack rehab with every day? Is it just an in-ring comeback? Is that fueling you through another rehab process that you've just gone? This is as much, you talk to any athlete that goes through these, like, this is as much a mental hurdle as it is a physical one that you have to go through. And having that drive of what you're returning to, that's another cloud that's over this for Punk.
certainly, yeah. And I would imagine, like, I feel like for somebody like him, like, whether if his future is in professional wrestling or something else, there's probably still enough motivation to, like, I don't know, be healthy and stay in shape, and you know um just for his daily life, just so he can walk the dog, as he talked about in the press conference. So I
I mean, this injury, at least he can walk, so that's a good thing.
right, he'll have to hold the leash on a different hand.
That he may have to, yes.
Right. But I feel like I can confidently say, like, maybe the days of CM Punk being your world champion, that might be over. Like, this has unfortunately been a pretty poor track record, and I mean, not to mention just kind of public sentiment, but just um the feeling of like, hey, like, should your championship be on somebody who, at this point, maybe you can attach the injury prone label to him. He's getting up there in age, and these periods aren't necessarily getting quicker for people to recover when you have such a backlog of people that are waiting for those opportunities. So if he does indeed come back, at this point, I feel like that's a big if. I see like a reduced schedule, somebody you can bring in for special attraction matches, and then beyond that, I mean, so much of it is contractual too, right? And what he's agreed to.
Yeah, I think it's a really tough one. As much as the focus is going to be on the brawl backstage, when you rewatch that press conference, it's really hard to imagine this guy being welcomed back into a locker room. I'm sure he has those people that champion him in the locker room, but I just watched that, and this was a guy that had, like, he just went scorched earth on this locker room, and it was just such a lack of respect that he had for so many key people, and the fact that it's, the biggest issue right now is management and getting this locker room back into a place where they are moving forward. And I just don't know if CM Punk fits in that locker room when you have such a public outburst as Sunday was. That you can reconcile that fact. I mean, it was him himself in that press conference who said, "We are beyond apologies." Like, he was the one that laid it out, that there is no redeeming yourselves in all of this. And I would imagine that probably goes both ways at this point, because that was only compounded moments later with everything that happened backstage. I think it's a very tricky one to look at. Can we get all these stars under one roof again? I am not optimistic that can happen. Can't say 0% chance, but it's very low.
Sure. But now, despite all that, if there's money to be made, and if you're Tony Khan, and provided there are no legal things that are kind of preventing Punk from not being able to return, for instance, if there's money to be made at the end of all of this, if you're Tony Khan, do you say, hey guys, this is what's best for my company and ultimately best for you guys who work for me? He's going to be brought back.
Yeah, that's certainly this week. That sounds too ambitious, but many times that when time when time surpasses, I think that you can sit down and maybe cooler heads will prevail. I do not know if CM Punk would be that individual. I think there's a lot on him that would have to really dial back a lot of what he said. And what did he say in that, when he called out Hangman Page in the promo? It's, the apology needs to be as loud as the accusations. So I don't think this is one where that just is done behind closed doors. Hey, I'm sorry, guys. You could definitely run a target. I think that it would take a whole lot more than that. And I have a hard time imagining that is doable at this point. But if the guys on the other side, if you're looking at Omega and the Bucks, is this good for business? Do we have to kind of swallow this one for the good of the company? Because this is the number one star. I don't think anyone is disputing that fact. And that comes with the greatest of leeway. That is going to be given way more rope than anybody else. But is it costly that it is that his presence would be such a negative in this locker room? And this injury, at least you don't have to address that immediately, in the sense that if they were to try and bring him back into this locker room in 6 weeks, like, that cannot happen now. Now he is gone for months and months. But that's it's very difficult. It's a very difficult management task for Tony Khan to try and handle all of these major personalities that got way beyond his control over the last month.
Yeah. I mean, hard for me to know exactly like what the process is of, like, people in AEW going out there and cutting promos on live TV. But I mean, do you think that there is, naturally a more sort of like critical eye from the Tony Khan and the producers of the show on vetting what people have to say before they go out there?
I think I would not want to just completely disregard unscripted promos. Like I think that by and large, the promos you get in AEW are strong because of that. But I do feel that you need to sort of have your principles on a same page. Like we are not going to go into territory that you are not willing to, and sometimes that's difficult. It's not like, hey, Wei, you and I are going to sit down. We're going to do a promo. Tell me everything that might really hit you hard. And I'm trying to build up a match to sell a pay-per-view and convince this audience that you and I really hate each other. And I don't know if I'm going to have a list of like 40 things that might impact you. It's like it becomes really tricky, like where you're trying to be in the moment, play off of people, blur these lines. This is going to happen. This will happen again, where a line is going to be said and someone is going to take it too seriously. Like that will happen. And I don't know if there's an easy answer to that, but I think this is sort of, there's been so much of looking at like unscripted promos and sort of not looking at this aspect of it. And maybe this is not a reasonable fear that people would have had, but it's played itself out in pretty dramatic fashion where you have, from Eddie Kingston and Sammy Guevara to all of this. Like it has happened enough times that it is, when it's dividing your locker room and causing this, then it's a problem.
Is it a problem with maybe the like people getting into territory that maybe they shouldn't, or is it perhaps a problem of a lack of system there for conflict resolution? Like let's say Eddie Kingston has a problem with what Sammy Guevara had to say. Should there be a third party that he should be going to rather than Sammy Guevara himself? Should CM Punk be going to a place to talk about what Hangman Page said in the promo rather than, going on TV several months later with a live microphone to address it himself?
I just don't know if a lot of these people are wired to utilize like a third party. I cannot imagine a CM Punk coming backstage. Hey, he said something I don't like.
Right.
Like I think it's more so like this is stuff that is going to just fester. And you're right. Like it's going to go like this is like this is the game you're playing with. You're trying to fool your audience into believing that, oh wow, he stepped over the line, but it's as well the person receiving the promo that is apparently you are also blurring that line for. Is this person trying to embarrass me on television, or is he trying to build up a match?
I understand that's sort of like the nature of like this business, but at the same time, this is not just people wrestling like on an independent wrestling show somewhere without this infrastructure or these expectations from major corporations for you to behave like a major corporation would. Like on a TV show, if somebody wrote a line that, I don't know, one of the stars didn't like, it wouldn't necessarily, to my feeling, result in a fist fight, okay? Or even like somebody going rogue on an SNL and like saying some shit that like, I don't know, somebody else would have been really upset by. Like, I feel like they're just like this type of behavior of like, either going out there and insult, like retaliating with physical violence, or even just like going out there and like retaliating with words on that are off script, so to speak. I like that has to go.
Yeah, and it's also going to come down to the personalities involved and how they like. There's been plenty of lines thrown at Punk that did not result in these problems.
There's a great compilation out there of like everything people said about him in AEW recently. Yeah.
So I mean, it's going to come down to like personality conflicts too. That this guy using that line on me, I'm okay with. That guy using the exact same line, I'm going to have I have a difference of opinion with this individual to begin with, so I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt that was a line. Now, this is all getting into the territory of like where you can see like there is a paranoia that always exists within professional wrestling, and it can be very troublesome to your locker room when this kind of when this kind of paranoia is running rampant.
The Punk issue, though, I don't necessarily want to like completely mix with like the Eddie Kingston one, because Eddie Kingston was purely about a promo. Punk's issue, I mean, the Hangman thing is almost just exacerbated because, of his association with the Elite, and also just because it's one of a string of many incidents involving CM Punk lately. But the Punk thing is largely about what, Cabana, or at least like the insinuation that like the accusation that like these EVPs spread lies about him. So it's like it's only one of several issues that seem to be going on right now with CM Punk.
There's a mistrust. I think that's what
Yeah.
it ultimately comes down to.